Previously on Dreams That Crashed.
Dreams That Crashed is the story of a successful young lawyer who won every single case. He was loved by everyone and had lots and lots of clients. He got married to a beautiful woman named Monica, and they had so much fun together. They lived a life of luxury. They were so happy together until his obsession for winning got the better part of him, and he lost every single thing that truly mattered.
Now we move on to chapter 2.
One morning, Nathaniel received a phone call that would change everything. A billionaire client, whose business empire was on the line, requested his representation for a high-profile lawsuit. This case would make Nathaniel the go-to lawyer for billionaires, securing his legacy forever. He dove into the case with reckless ambition, determined to prove that he could not just win, but dominate. As he worked tirelessly, his personal life suffered even more. Monica began to resent his increasing neglect, but Nathaniel saw only the final prize in sight. He couldn't afford to fail, not now. The stakes were too high. In the courtroom, everything seemed perfect. Nathaniel had anticipated every move, prepared every argument, but in a crucial moment, his overconfidence led to a fatal mistake. He dismissed a minor detail that, in retrospect, was the key to winning the case. The opponent used it against him, and the tide turned. Nathaniel scrambled to fix the error, but the damage had been done. The media began to report on his slip-up, and news spread that Nathaniel Daniels, the invincible lawyer, wasn't so perfect after all.
Now let's continue with chapter 3.
The case was lost. What was meant to be Nathaniel's crowning achievement became his greatest failure. Clients started dropping him. The media pounced on the story, dragging his name throughout the mud. Monica, hurt and disappointed, couldn't understand how he had let such a small detail ruin everything. Their marriage, once strong, began to crack. Nathaniel left the sting of betrayal, not just from his own mistake, but from the people who had once looked up to him. The perfect image he had created was now shattered. He was left to face the consequences alone. The consequences of his mistake were swift and brutal. His law firm dissolved, clients left in droves, and Nathaniel found himself embroiled in lawsuits. His finances, once overflowing, were now dwindling. The relentless media continued to tear him apart. Monica, unable to bear the constant strain, finally left. The perfect life they had built was now a distant memory, and Nathaniel's world seemed to crumble faster than he could imagine. He retreated into his penthouse, isolated, wondering how he had let everything slip away so easily. His career, his marriage, his self-worth, everything was falling apart.
Moving on to chapter 4.
Alone in the darkness of his apartment, Nathaniel reflected on the choices he had made. He thought about the years he had spent obsessing over winning, the sacrifices he had made, and the people he had pushed away. He began to realize that his pursuit of perfection had led him to neglect everything that truly mattered. As the night grew longer, he sank deeper into regret. His identity, once tied to his success, now seemed meaningless. He was no longer the man who could do no wrong. He was just the man who had lost every single thing.
Now we enter chapter 5.
Despite the devastation, Nathaniel wasn't ready to give up. He sought out smaller, less glamorous cases to take on, hoping to rebuild his name. Every victory felt hollow. No matter how many wins he achieved, they couldn't erase the scar of the big mistake. Monica had moved on, and his friends had faded away, but he knew he couldn't give up. The world may have turned its back on him, but he had to prove to himself that he wasn't just defined by one mistake. Nathaniel took on case after case, each one harder than the last, as he slowly began to rebuild what he had lost. One evening, after a particularly grueling case, Nathaniel ran into an old colleague, James, who had once been a mentor. James had gone on to become a highly respected attorney, but unlike many, he hadn't shunned Nathaniel. They sat down for a drink, and James offered Nathaniel advice. "You're not the man you used to be," James said, "and maybe that's a good thing. You've learned now. You've learned that winning isn't everything." Nathaniel listened intently. For the first time, he felt that he could begin again, not just as a lawyer, but as a man who had learned humility. Months later, Nathaniel was approached with a new case, a challenging one, but one that could be his redemption. This time, it wasn't about money or status. It was a case where the stakes were personal, one that required integrity and dedication. Nathaniel poured his heart into it. He stayed up late, carefully considering every single detail, but he also recognized the weight of his past. This time, he didn't just want to win. He wanted to do it the right way. In the courtroom, he didn't rely on arrogance or bravado. Instead, he relied on the lessons he had learned: honesty, humility, and a commitment to doing what was just.
And finally, chapter 6, where everything changes.
Nathaniel won the case. It wasn't as glamorous as his past victories, but it meant everything to him. For the first time in years, he felt like he had earned his success. But the victory was different this time. He didn't return to his penthouse or to his lavish lifestyle. Instead, he reconnected with the people who mattered, including Monica. They began to rebuild their relationship slowly, not based on who Nathaniel was in the past, but on who he was becoming. Nathaniel had learned the most important lesson of life. True success is about balance. It's not just about winning in court, but about living a life that is meaningful. He had crashed once, but now he was finally ready to rise again. As Nathaniel walked into the future, he knew his dreams had crashed, but in the wreckage, he had found something far more valuable: redemption. And with that, he was ready to rebuild not just his career, but his life.